Peace and greetings and all that good stuff. Just gonna wait for a couple people to pop in. As you see the title that peace, Antoine. Title that I just came up with. I'm gonna go through a couple of things. We've touched on this, but I still feel in certain areas there's still kind of a misconception about this. And obviously we'll get into other areas. Obviously I just throw a title up there just to spark as a conversation piece, like it's anything planned. But peace, Kenyatta. Peace, Emperor. There is, first and foremost, let's establish this. The left-hand path is for anybody that pretty much wants to, if they make a conscious decision to practice this path. So let's make that crystal clear. There is this misconception amongst, I'm not talking about those per se that are melanated and practice this path. So this is not, I'm not speaking to you. What I've known over the years, be it Latinos, Blacks, they're not very open about it because it's not accepted, quote unquote, mainstream. Because, and the reason for that is because of, again, all the bullshit that you pull up on the internet, and Google, and YouTube right here, and on other social media platforms. People always hear the term left-hand path and they automatically associate it with what we call modern-day Satanism. And that is not the only left-hand path. The left-hand path that we speak about here, or the left-hand path that I work with, that is not in its entirety the same thing. Matter of fact, a lot of these left-hand path Satanist groups are actually, in my opinion, a lot more religious than religious people. Like I said, on the left-hand path, the Black magician is the highest deity and does not worship anything outside of him or herself. That's important to understand, step one. Be it left-hand path or whatever you study or practice, if you're worshiping something external, it's a right-hand path philosophy, because right-hand path philosophies and dogmas and traditions are always focused on worshiping or searching for some external deity or force. And that's not what this path is about. This path is quite simply about self-mastery and raising yourself up to the god or the goddess, raising yourself up to a god or goddess level, and on the road to immortality. That's the purpose of this path. When we say god or goddess, don't have the definition in your mind of what monotheism defines as being a god or a goddess. It's not some spook foreseeing force that controls everything and is infallible, because even the god of monotheism is not infallible and makes mistakes. Peace, Sister Sonia. Antoine, what do you mean as far as your base along the left-hand path? I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question. Just want to make sure we're clear. But the reason why I bring this up is amongst the melanated people, some of the ones that I do know that practice this path, Blacks or Latinos, they're not very open about it because it's not, quote unquote, accepted as mainstream. As I said, this path is for anybody. But its origins, as pretty much every other spiritual system and philosophy, have its origins somewhere in Africa. And the Egyptian left-hand path, peace. The Egyptian left-hand path, okay, I got you. I see your question, Antoine. I'm gonna get to that in a sec. I understand it now. Appreciate you clarifying that. I focus more on the origin of what we call Egyptian left-hand path or Egyptian left-hand path magic, working with the deific masks of ancient Egypt, different archetypes and deities from the ancient Egyptian pantheon. When you're dealing with left-hand path, for an example, just to clarify some of the confusions and misconceptions, when you're working with, okay, let's say Satanism, or people that, and again, this is just my opinion. There's a lot of people that think they're practicing left-hand path, called Satanism, and in me, they're just more religious than Christians. That's just the reality. If you're sitting there saying, "Hail Satan," I would always ask a person, how does that differ from a Christian that believes in the Christian God? So if you are a Satanist, for example, do you believe Satan is an actual entity or being? Let's go down and break down the origin of the word. The origin of the word means adversary, right? Which has root in the word adverse. Satan is just a mindset, because Satan comes from religious texts. It has its connection to Christianity. It's biblical. The problem I find with like the Church of Satan and Satanism in itself, it's basically an antithesis to Christianity. They're focused so much on destroying the concepts of religion and Christianity, which in essence really gives it life. Because if you're acknowledging that, whether you're acknowledging it's wrong or not, you are acknowledging the Judeo-Christian God. And that's also a myth and not a reality. So when you look at Satan as the adversary, it's a mindset. It's no different in ancient Egypt as Set being the isolator, or the isolated consciousness, the nonconformist. When you are adversary or adverse, it just means you do not conform to the norm. You don't follow something just because everybody else is following it. A god or a goddess or somebody that's on the path to self-mastery makes those decisions for themselves. That's what it means to be the adversary. So a lot of these quote unquote, and I'm not saying all people that practice it, but I got to keep it Peace City Dreams. I got to keep it factual. I just see a lot of those organizations are more religious than religious people are. And I want to make sure people understand when we say left-hand path, don't automatically think it's just referring to that and that only. So I want to make that, abundantly clear. To go back to your question, Antoine, which practice did I start with? Well, African witchcraft and sorcery kind of led me further deep into the left-hand path. I practiced, being scratched in Palo. It started actually first Santeria / Ifa. Then I kind of branched into Palo. Then I kind of geared and started looking into African witchcraft and sorcery, different practices. And then it led me into the Heka of ancient Egypt. And it seemed like the Heka of ancient Egypt removed a lot of the external stuff. And I want to be clear what I mean by that. In the African traditions, it just seems like there's a lot of physical things that always had to be done. Animal sacrifices, different offerings. We talked about offerings on the last video. The need and the need and not so need for them. They do hold a place in certain traditions. Most traditions utilize it as the energy, or if you're cleansing something, or if you're removing something, that energy is put into the blood, and that blood is offered up to sacrifice peanuts. That's good. The blood is offered up to the gods. All right. And I get that concept. I've just found as I've grown along the path and in higher left-hand practices, most left-hand practices don't believe in harming any type of animal. And that's just my take on it. Now, I'm not going to be a hypocrite, because coming up in Ifa and Palo, yes, I did sacrifice animals and partake in animal sacrifice at one time. So I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I do understand its place. And for those that do partake in it, I got no problem with that. But I'm just at a point where it's not a necessity for me anymore. So I don't sit here and condemn anybody for doing it or not doing it, because there is a certain method that you go about if you do partake in any of these traditions that utilize animal sacrifice. Most have to be initiated in the knife. Not just anybody in these traditions should do it. There's a ceremony one must go through to properly be given that / title or position. The animals that have to be sacrificed a certain way without suffering, etc. But I found, not to get off base, and why I started, I just found as I outgrew it, I just didn't see the need for it. I do understand it, as I said. Peace, Stray Panther. I do see the, I see the correlation, but it's just my choice on my path to self-mastery where I just don't feel like I need that anymore. And if anybody practices that, power to them. So that's where I started, and this is how I got to where I have, because my history, and not to get into the long all drawn out, I've come through many different systems over the last 25 years. Peace, Alquimista, Sister Sabrina. I found over the years, through experience, this is how I was able to kind of, as I said again on a previous live feed, remember, part of this path to self-mastery is you laying out that path yourself. So you pick and choose what applies for you, what resonates with you. And the unique thing, one of probably the greatest things about this path is it connects to so many other different spiritual systems. It's not limited. The problem I also found with a lot of the traditions, you had to be that and be that exclusively. And you couldn't deviate outside of that. I found also in a lot of the African traditions, there was rules and regulations and restrictions and do's and don'ts, which I just felt as I got mature and older, and I'm not talking older just in age, I'm talking about in wisdom, I just felt like I didn't want to be under that restriction. I didn't want to be defined and confined by tradition and tradition only. I don't believe that somebody has the right to tell you that this is the way to do it and that way only. Now, if you want to exclusively belong to that specific tradition, then yes, you have to do it that way. But I made the conscious decision to just evolve away from that. And I now, just like anybody else watching this video, has the ability also to tap into these systems and make them work for them. You just got to know the proper way to do it. It started there, and going through a whole, even back in the early 80s, the early conscious movements I was involved in, and all that. 5% Nation of Gods and Earth, which I still do kind of study because it still can apply on a certain level. As people that know me went through that whole Ansar, Nubian Nation thing, left that. But that's part of the journey. It don't matter what you came through, got initiated in Ifa, et cetera. That's part of your path, but that's what's the key foundation ingredients of your path. We all probably have a story to tell. We all probably came through different backgrounds, and don't look at it like people will always email me and say, "Oh, I wish I would have known this earlier." Blah blah blah. I wouldn't have been, so lost in the church or whatever. But don't look at it like that. Look at it as part of your journey, and don't focus on what was fucked up about it. Because even in those right-hand path philosophies, extract from it what you can apply, because it's not like everything in there is bad, because there's some basic, philosophical things that you could apply to self. So I'm not saying don't disregard it. Whatever, always know this. In alchemy, say wherever you are, that's where you're supposed to be. People don't really understand what that means. Wherever you are in your spiritual journey, that's where you're supposed to be. Wherever you are now, that's where you're supposed to be. And reflect on how you got there. And don't just reflect on what was so fucked up about it, because I'm sure you could spend a long period of time dissecting what was so jacked up or wrong about it, but that shit is irrelevant. What you need to focus on is, all right, what did I get out of it? And what did I learn? And what were my reasons for leaving and moving on? You understand? That's how you got to look at it and decipher that. Yeah, so Sister Sonia types in, as they say, eat the meat and spit out the bones. That's a good metaphor. So take the meat of it. You know what I'm saying? Gillian Page. Yeah, I mean, yes, the Agori. Here's the thing we got to get out of these. Who says that? I'm saying, I know there's a lot of philosophies that say the Agori, but I'm going back. You can go predate that. You can go even further back to ancient Egypt. See, the other thing we have to kind of remove, stop letting people define for us, because in their research, and that's what they've come up with, when you go into many different spiritual traditions, as far as the origins and who started them, we could be philosophizing and debating about that. But I'm going back beyond the Agora. You can go back to the pre-dynastic Egyptians. We were talking about the Neolithics before there was any pyramids even built. They refer to them as the Pygmies and the Watusis. You can find, before any of these civilizations, cultures, philosophies, and groups came about on the scene, this stuff goes way back beyond that. Now, it depends on what tradition you come from. There's many people will have their own input, and that's fine. But I wouldn't say that all left hand practices started with the Agori. I wouldn't say that. There will be people that will, because again, we have to get locked out of our mind when we're saying left hand path. What exactly are we identifying with left hand path? And I think a lot of the modern term definitions and explanations come from the last couple hundred years. So in that sense, what people are identifying with left hand path today, yes, you could probably categorize under that category. But let me give you an example. I had some books here I kind of wanted to make reference to, and I'm going to get into in a minute. And for people to do some research, some people had sent me emails, which we'll get into that shortly. But also know this, outside of the term itself and the history, I did a video a while back called Stop Classifying Yourself. I only use the term left-hand path because it's something that people can connect with and identify as far as what the practice is. I wouldn't get caught up just specifically in a lot of the dogmas and definitions that come with it, all right? When somebody says they're left-hand path, it just simply means they're not a conformist. They think for themselves. They don't, again, as I said a minute ago, do everything because somebody else is doing it. They're not afraid to express their opinion. They're not afraid to disagree in the sense that they have no issues speaking out and correcting things if it's not in agreement with their own personal spiritual path. Again, it's likened to Seth, the isolated consciousness, the isolated. The left-hand path is about tapping into that isolated consciousness. The word isolated obviously has root in the word isolation, which means you isolate yourself from the norm. If you want, in essence, that is left-hand path, and anything that falls under that category, regardless of what tradition or system you're coming from, that's how I define it. Now, people who don't have to 100% agree with that, and that's fine. But I don't limit what that term means, because when we start, it's the same thing they do in monotheism, right? People will say they're Christian, right? And then if we say, what's the origin of Christianity? Forget it. We have a 5-hour debate. Some will say that Catholicism, which in essence, historically, to a degree is true, is the oldest branch of Christianity. And that's not true. We talked about that. The Coptic Christians, or the Coptic Christians in ancient Egypt are the oldest branch of Christianity, and they still exist today. And if you look at the practices, for an example, in Coptic Christianity and what modern day Christianity performs are two different things. But both claim to be the origin, but historically, Coptic Christian would go back early. But in essence, it's when we get caught up in that, there's a lot of traditions that come in. Because when you say Christianity in America, forget it, man. Shit, you're opening up a can of worms, because how many different sects of Christianity alone do we have in this country, from non-denominational to Pentecostal, Jehovah's Witness, Baptist, Catholic. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. So when we're saying left-hand path, and that's why, again, I just randomly came up with the title, African Origins, the fourth dynasty of the pre-dynastic Egyptians, Pharaoh Unas, I mentioned that a few days ago. And when you go back and study the pre-dynastic Egyptians, especially before the 21st and 22nd dynasty, the pentagram, for an example, the pentagram, when people see the pentagram, they automatically, and here's another good thing to put into perspective to understand what we're talking about here. When people see the pentagram, I'm talking about the average person that may not be knowledgeable on the pentagram and left-hand path. They automatically, again, the ignorant will just identify the pentagram with Satanism and devil worship because they don't understand its origins. The pentagram prior to the 21st, 22nd dynasty can be found as a seal on a lot of ancient Egyptian artifacts. They used it as a seal when putting together certain documents. It was found on different relics, and this is something you can research on your own. So you can find the pentagram quote unquote, before it was used in any of these ancient left-hand paths that we identify with today. So the pentagram is nothing new. It's one of the most popular occult symbols, whether it's, has the face of Baphomet, in the center of it, or the pentagram in itself. The pentagram has even obviously found its way into what we call white magic or white witchcraft or Wicca. And they use it on a whole different level when they work with it with earth magic. So again, it just depends on the systems and the traditions that you identify with. That's important to understand. And the reason why it's important to understand, because when you're practicing anything, and I always ask this to people, why do you want to do this? Right? People that come from other practices, why do you want to partake of the left-hand path? What's your reasoning for coming on this path? Because what I've found is some people will come on this path and it's not what they thought it was. Okay. Now, again, I always ask, like, people will contact me and say, this is what I want to do. And again, I stand behind the premise, like Antoine Graham said, it is an African tradition, in essence, whether you connect it with the Agori, the ancient Egyptians. You could even go to different tribes in West Africa, Benin. And there's a lot of different African spiritual practices that are similar in essence. And again, whether it's any of those tribes or cultures aforementioned, we know it has its origins and roots in ancient Africa. That's a fact. It's not racism. That's a fact. Though this path is for anybody, but just like everything else that originally belonged to melanated people, it was taken and claimed by others that were not melanin. And this is the reality. And that's why I said in the very beginning of the video, this is why I find not all people, some people that may be on the path, I've ran into people that don't have others around them. They could be Latino or Black or whatever, and don't have others around them to share in this path, so that they kind of stay on the down low. Because as I said, in all these conscious platforms, like, I don't care, you go on YouTube, you got all these Kemetic conscious platforms and all these, quote unquote, Black conscious groups. The thing I find ironic about ancient Egypt, everybody always talks about Kemet, Egypt, this and that, but they never break down Heka. What is really Egyptian Heka, right? Science of Heka. They always quote in the Coming Forth by Day, and I don't think they understand what that book is about, falsely called the Book of the Dead, but I don't think they understand what that book is about. It's a book of spells and magic. That's why when you read it, everywhere you see the blanks is the name of the individual that has to be inserted. Some people look at the Coming Forth by Day as if it's some type of religious or biblical text for ancient Egypt, and it's not. When you really look at it, it's a book of spells and connotations. It's the whole science of you, the initiate, going through the transformation process from being mortal into immortality. I mean, you got rituals and spells in there that symbolically tie you into destroying a pep, right? As we talked a little bit about that a few days back ago, a pep is symbolic of things that arise, symbolically, things that arise within yourself that you're trying to conquer and master, right? And the only individual set who represents the isolated consciousness, who is not a conformist, was the only Egyptian deity that was able to slay and destroy a pep. Even one of the highest deities or archetypes in ancient Egypt in the stories couldn't do it, which was Set's father, Amun-Ra, right? He struggled with it. He spent his whole nights, every night, keeping a pep at bay. Now, remember, this is symbolic now, right? The only thing that was able to destroy that or keep it at bay, because remember, it resurrected every morning, and the Coming Forth by Day tells you this, right? Because it's telling you chaos will always find its way in. But once the Black adept is in control of their path, they can keep that chaos at bay. What it also means in these occult orders, thus you get the definition, out of chaos comes order. Who makes order out of the chaos? It is you as the Black adept on this path. You can take any of that chaos and make it work for you. Chaos is not necessarily a bad thing, right? There's another system in left-hand path philosophy called what? Chaos magic. Now, again, in chaos magic, people have there's many different methods of it, even though there might be a lot of similarities. If you might be familiar with Peter Carroll's book, I'm just using one that most people are familiar with. I find chaos magic, for an example, when you focus on the aspect of embodying what the deity represents to the very point maybe of using the implements, dressing up like the deity, doing the incantations that connect spiritually with that particular archetype, which unlocks a certain part or psyche in your mind, then the individual is now opened themselves up. I like to say for the mounting of the archetype, not possession, because when you hear possession, people spook out. If you want to use that word, you now embody every aspect of the archetype. You become the archetype. You feel the power of the archetype. That's getting into a whole, it's shifting into a whole nother avenue now. But again, these spiritual traditions branch out into all these areas: chaos magic, vampirism. It just doesn't matter. All right, let's see. We got some questions here. To the sister, let me scroll up, make sure. I know that kind of branched off into a bunch of different things. Sister Gillian Page, but you are correct. In essence, yes, the Agori are one of the originators, most definitely, of this path. So definitely. Stephanie Ann says, I've heard Anubis created the white race with stolen technology secrets from his aunt Isis and used the moon instead of the sun. Now, I'm not 100% familiar with that. I have read that. I can't confirm that as fact. I'm not sure if you could share what source you read that or where you got that from. I did read something similar to that, but I can't recall exactly where I read that, and I don't want to speak on something that I'm not 100% familiar. But what I do know, I'm just going to, from my research and what I've done, I've never was able to confirm that as being, a fact. Now, in many different theories and cultures, as far as races and how they came about, there are similar stories. And what you'll find is some of these characters were synchronized in different cultures with those particular individuals in those stories. Whether you're reading it from a religious text or whether you're reading it from any of these ancient texts, be it ancient Egypt, the Ifa traditions, have their theory on how the different races came about and how we got our different skin complexions. But we can apply basic science first. A lot of that is theory and traditions. We can use basic science. We know civilization started in Africa, regardless of what your ethnicity is. If you haven't accepted that reality, regardless of what you are, that's just common sense. That's basic science. So we know things branched out from there. Now, when we get into the different ethnicities and how different tribes and people and ethnicities came about, that's a class in itself. But we know the original melanated people had their origin. Go back to what I was talking about earlier, the Neolithics, the Pygmies and the Watusis, who occupied that Nile region prior to there being any pyramids, any of that stuff that wasn't there. We know they migrated out, and some went west and some went north up into the Aswan, Sudan area, which gave birth to the Egyptian culture. So this predates the Egyptian culture. They worked their way from Nubia into ancient Egypt, as I mentioned a few days ago. So without Nubia, ancient Aswan, Sudan, there would be no Egypt. The Bushman, you can get to the story of that. We know how, from that point in Northeast Africa, when a lot of the Indo-Aryans came in, when we again, to give you the short story, when the Hyksos, right, the Hekakasut, as they say, the Greeks and there were, the combination of the Greeks and the Indo-Aryan Europeans came in and mixed in with the ancient original Egyptians. This gave you your last 46 dynasties. So where the confusion comes in, remember, most of the information we were taught on Egypt, and even to this day, you're getting the last 46 dynasties. And the last 46 dynasties of ancient Egypt were the Hyksos mixing in with the original Nubans or Africans. And then obviously it gets even more detailed from there. So you're going to find that no matter what, tradition, spiritual system you practice, even outside of left-hand path, it's going to always have its root and origin in ancient Africa. All right. Peace, Baffa, Margo. What's going on? How you doing? Jack, Jay Jizzle, what up? All right, Mossberg, appreciate you too for watching. Definitely appreciate everybody for watching. All right, Antoine. Again, if anybody has questions, just feel free to type them in. That's kind of why I decided to start going live. And again, I just want to make this clear. I don't want anybody to agree with everything I say. I want you to go research. You could have your own perspective on it. And we can agree to disagree as mature individuals and, have your input. We can dialogue, build respect. I don't want everybody. You can't possibly agree with everything I say, especially if there's things I'm talking about that you may or may not be familiar with, or you might have a different perspective, to share. And that's a beautiful thing. So I just want to make that clear. I'm not saying that what I am saying is the only way and to tell all. But it's up to you to be intelligent and do your research. But again, if anybody has any questions, type them in. All right, Antoine types in, how important, this is a good question, is it to be reprogrammed when going along the left hand, and how does one do so? All right, we kind of talked a little bit about this a few days ago. I use a term on this path. When you come on this path, the best thing for you to do is, I'm not saying when I'm saying to be reprogrammed, don't let what you've learned prior interfere with where you're getting ready to go, because you're going to find out that you got to have a clear, open mind and be willing to explore and investigate everything, regardless if it interferes with your and personal opinions and beliefs and morals have to be chucked out the window, because you'll never fully grow on this path. So this is what I mean when you have to reprogram yourself and how you do so. So one needs to come like a newborn, right? You utilize it as the sense, like religious people will tell you, you must be born again, right? Born again Christians, right? They say it's symbolic of that everything prior to before you were doing was wrong. Now that you're accepted in the blood of Jesus, you start fresh, you're all over, you start from scratch, anew, right? I'm just utilizing that concept. Look at that same methodology, except, fuck the spook Jesus bullshit. I'm saying use the same mindset. You will be able to draw on some of your past experiences and what you learned. As you go down the path, you'll be able to apply them in certain scenarios. And like Sister Sonia said, you'll be able to pull the meat and spit the bones out. So some of it you will be able to utilize and apply moving forward. But always know you're going to encounter stuff that might question what you've learned in the past. And you might struggle with some of it, where it could have been something that a principle or a level of information that you stood firm on for years. And maybe you now encounter something on this path that shakes that foundation up. So you got to be willing to address it head on. And you can't take the mentality on this path that, a lot of will again come like what I know is right and everything else is wrong. And I struggled with that, because I thought, having a background in consciousness for so many years, I thought I knew a lot. I found I didn't really know as much as I thought. And so being able to humble yourself in certain situations, for lack of a better word, these are all the precepts to being able to open yourself up and be receptive to reprogramming or reteaching yourself. With, again, and I want to make it clear, you can still utilize, there are going to be some things in the past that you've learned that you'll be able to utilize to an extent, but you will. And it's not a matter of maybe if, you will encounter a lot of shit. A lot of things that you've learned will be questioned and put to the test. And the key with it is all the bullshit about yourself comes to the surface. You understand? All the stuff that you deal with will rise and come to the surface. All right. So Trey Heru, where's your melanin? Obviously, you must not be knowledgeable on the different ethnicities of melanated people. So if you're one of those individuals because you think you're dark skinned and more knowledgeable and educated than everybody else, that's some personal shit you got to get over with and deal with. And it's as simple as just not tuning into the channel. It's that easy. So, we don't need to deal with that shit. If you understood Nero and neuromelanin, you wouldn't ask such a foolish question, and especially carrying the name Heru. And I wouldn't put Trey in front of the name Heru. That obviously shows a little more uneducation. That's the thing I was talking about earlier, where people have their own personal interpretation of the truth because they think they got a lock on 100% truth. They think because, you know, things that they've been taught is the only right way, and everybody else, this path ain't for everybody. And we've said that a million times. Antoine. All right, we answered that question, Antoine. All right. Sonia types in, Antoine, my humble opinion is to work on a lovely chocolate star. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you were kind of addressing what Brother Antoine was asking. Yeah, Jack types in, that's a good question. You're dealing with your own issues and it will help you find your own desires. Let's talk about that real quick. That's important because when dealing with desires, emotions, most people are taught in a lot of these right-hand path philosophies to suppress those desires, okay? They're taught to find some way to block it out, be it through rules, restrictions, be it through certain texts and following guidelines and laws, etc., to always suppress it. That's the biggest lie. You can't 100% suppress all your desires because your desires will consume you if you do. So most of those paths are always based on the precepts of telling you what you should and should not do. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't go there. Don't eat this. Don't wear that. And then these are the same individuals that claim that they're God or they're God or they're goddesses and that they don't conform to anything. But yet they're following all these rules and restrictions from how a certain way they need to wear their hair, a certain way they need to dress, etc. It starts basic. And then you see that idiocy and religious mentality, like I said before, whether it's Ifa, even in the so-called Egyptian Kemetic community, a lot of people are religious. They claim that they're not, but they still look at the Egyptian deities as religious figures. They still worship and they're still praying to these things. So it has to start there. But as far as desires, this is important. So let's use food for an example, right? Most people, let's say an individual doesn't have diet or the desire for food completely under control. And that could be a problem. It could be a problem to the point where it consumes you. As we've talked about before in the past, we talked about that you need to understand your blood type, first and foremost, to understand what type of diet. And anybody that fucking tells you there's one specific diet that works for everybody, they're even more ignorant, okay? There's not one specific diet for every person on the planet. That's a bunch of bullshit. If you knew your blood type, you wouldn't be saying that. O positive people need a certain blood type. A and B blood needs a certain diet for their blood type. Very important. Hold on one second. You need to have the diet where those that do struggle with food, I'm going to use that metaphor. All right, it doesn't mean you can't eat sweets per se. You shouldn't eat them all the time. It don't mean you can't indulge once in a while, but you should not be eating garbage constantly throughout the day, throughout the week. How you become immune to it is the reason why you desire and crave it, because there's a certain personality within you that is desiring, let's say, a particular food. But you got to find a fine line to not be able to be consumed by that desire. So the question is, as far as desires, how do you appease them without being consumed? So that could be applied to sex, right? People try to suppress their sexual desires, and we talked about that a little bit. That can consume you if not appeased. Any philosophy or spiritual system that teaches you to just suppress it, all that's happening is it's creating a stronger resistance. It's going to come to the surface. And that's why, in relation to your question earlier, Antoine, when I was talking about when you reprogram and start teaching yourself, what tends to happen is a lot of this stuff boils to the surface. You start questioning everything, and issues that you might have been maybe not addressing or avoiding is going to kind of bubble up to the surface. All right, let's see. Sister Sabrina, alchemy stands to reprogram the psychic mind like cleaning out a computer. Yep. And that's true. Look at it. That's another good metaphor to look at it as. Look at it as cleaning out a hard drive. Completely cleaning it out and starting from scratch. That's another good terminology. Because your mind is literally, it absorbs and stores things in the subconscious that you are not conscious of from the very moment you were born to the present day. And there's some things there you may not be 100% aware of that are affecting you. And that's what I mean when I say this path will bring that to the surface. So yeah, it's like you gotta be, and again, I'm like I said earlier, I'm gonna say it again. I know I said it a few times. It's not that you can't utilize things that you've learned. And that's why I was talking about earlier. Realize that on this part of the journey, that stuff that you went through prior was necessary. It's part of your journey. It's part of your path. So don't look at everything like, again, as I said, people will always email me and say, oh, I wish I would have known this, and then I wish I would have maybe didn't waste time on this or that. But you were supposed to. You understand what I'm saying? You were supposed to go through what you went through to get you here. You understand what I'm saying? That's how you got to look at this. You can't look at it like, first of all, you can't get that time back. That's number one. So sitting there talking about what it could have, should have is a waste of time and energy. As I said earlier, when you come on this path, I always ask a person that contacts me that wants to practice black magic, that wants to get on this path and work these spiritual sciences. What is your purpose for doing so? Because as I said before, this shit is not for everybody. You understand? And me personally, I put this as polite as I can. I'm not interested, and those that know me for the last 25 years, I'm not interested in trying to convert nobody. I couldn't give a shit about that, because this path is not about a path about going on a mission to save the whole world, okay? Which most other spiritual systems feed you this illusion that we're all going to be unified and it's about coming together. That's all they talk about, but none of them come together. And the reason why is because they don't understand your tribal nature. And I'm not in it for that. I couldn't give a shit. Again, I'm not in it if you like me or love me. That shit is irrelevant to me. This is about passing the information on, and it's up to you to utilize and do with it what you need to do. Because as I said before many times, nobody can make you do anything. You're going to have to want to do it for yourself. So it kills me when people say, yeah, I was building with a brother or sister and I converted them. You didn't convert them to shit. It's because they wanted to change. You might have influenced them. You might have sparked them, but you didn't make them do shit. You didn't convert them to whatever the fuck you think you converted them to. See, when you start believing that shit, your ego starts to get the best of you in the wrong way. Okay, remember, you need the ego to protect you, and it does. It has its strengths, but that's when your ego will give you that false sense of fucking illusion. And this is not a path about saving everybody. And I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested in converting nobody. So I always ask people, what is your purpose again for coming on the path? It should be, and the reason why I keep saying that, it should be because all the other shit you went through didn't quite give you the answers or the solutions that you were looking for. It didn't quite, there's more out there. You sense that there's more. You sense that I didn't get everything from the whole Kemetic thing. I didn't get everything from being initiated in Ether. There's still missing pieces. I didn't get everything from alchemy or whatever it is you came through. You understand? That's the reason why you should want to be on this path. And that's why I asked the question. This is not, look, you're not going to come on this path and some people under this illusion, I can work black magic and become a millionaire. Okay? You can work black magic to become very successful. And I'm telling you, standing here, being a living result of it, whatever I want, I can get. You understand? Within reason. Okay. I don't worry about where my next dollar is coming from. I don't worry about where my next meal is coming from. I can walk out my front door, have plenty of cars to drive. You understand? Have a beautiful house to live in, own houses that I rent out. You understand? I'm just giving you an example. You can have consistent financial success on this path. So when you get these idiots that come to you And they got all this knowledge and they so deep, but they're a poor example of it. They struggling. They ain't got shit. They can't even pull $10 out their pocket to buy a hot fucking sandwich, but they want to school you and break down and educate shit to you because they read a few books. You understand? They read, they read the Metu Netter, and now you can't tell them shit. You understand? But look at their example. They just a poor example. They're a living example, doesn't line up to the shit that they talk out of their mouth. So they take on, they put on all these spiritual attire. They got to wear, they got to profess to everybody how African they are and how Egyptian they are, just because they have an insecurity that they're covering up for themselves. And they don't want to face the reality that overall they're not successful. Just because you claim to be something, don't mean that's what you are. I don't care if you claim to be a spiritual guru in Buddhism. You understand? Whatever it is, you should be a living example of what you teach. I can make that statement, whether you like me or not. I'm a living example of what I teach because I have the results. That's all I need. So I couldn't give a fuck. This is why I say it's not about saving people. Don't worry about what other people, because there'll be a lot of people that are judgmental on this path. And if you practice this path, do not worry about what people think. Your example speaks volumes. That's all. If you get results, keep doing what you're doing. That's another email I get frequently. People will ask, and this is more so people maybe newer to the path that are practicing this path. They'll ask, like, where, what should I be doing? Where should I start? And I keep telling people, there's not one specific answer to that question, okay? Everybody's going to have to start where is needed. You shouldn't be looking for somebody to tell you where to start. You should analyze yourself and address the needs, what's currently going on in your life. But don't worry about what people think on this path, your example. They may not agree with your information and your knowledge, and that's fine, but one thing they can look at you, him or her, and go, but yeah, you know what? They're a living example of what they teach. They're successful on all levels. They take care of their family. You know what I mean? They produce things. They help out in the community. They're making a difference. And just by the way you carry yourself, you understand? That's how, you set the example. But let me scroll up. I know I missed a few questions. Hold on. Just bear with me. That's correct, Alchemista. You can't be in denial when your issues come to the services either. It's work. This path is about work. And I'm glad you bring that up. Work, right? How many videos, I can't remember. I've done a few videos over the years about doing the work. See, everybody's got diarrhea of the fucking mouth, all right? Let me tell you what diarrhea of the mouth is. Everybody talks a good game, right? Everybody talks bullshit. Everybody sit there and talks about how deep they are and what they think they know. But what work are you putting in? So you got all this knowledge. When I'm always talking with brothers, you got all this knowledge, right? I've sat in circles, brothers breaking down all the different dynasties of Egypt. And by the time I'm falling asleep and snoring because the shit is so boring, because they're regurgitating everything they read. And then I wait for the right opportunity to ask one simple question. And I got one question and one question only. It's the only thing I ask after sitting in a boring ass history lesson. What are you doing with that information? How are you applying it? That's all I want to know. Other than you regurgitating it and remembering the shit, how can I look at you and translate that success in your everyday life? Other than, we're not talking about because it clarified certain things and now you know things that you didn't know. That's the obvious. That's not what I'm talking about. And I mentioned Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum, right? Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum, again, who we're going to have on the show on the Awakening Universal Minds radio show on April 12th, who I've actually had on a couple of times. He's going to talk about that. How do we take the information back then? Because look, this is not a path about talking about how great we used to be back in the day. You understand? That's the other problem with cats. They want to stand around and talk about back in the day. We were gods and goddesses back in the day, back in the day. I told you that's a disease that melanated people suffer from. It's called back in the day-itis. I'm not interested about what we were back in the day. I want to know in 2018 and moving forward, what can we be now? Because if we're going to sit around and have a back in the day conversation, it absolutely gets us nowhere. We're wasting our time and energy. Dr. Bynum, who does something I think is unique, and again, I know I've been throwing it out there the last couple of weeks to kind of prepare for his visit on the radio show. Get his book, Dark Light Consciousness. He, to me, is one of the most unique authors out there. And again, real quick, and I'll keep plugging them into the show. Those I know who are familiar with Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum, he's been around for a while. He's traveled the world. He teaches at Boston University. He is a clinical, been a psychologist for years. He's traveled all over Africa. He's been initiated pretty much in most of the traditions that he talks about in his book. He's done lectures all over the world. And again, just by his experience and his works show and prove what he is. It's not just him, again, talking shit because he's a Google scholar or he read a few books on YouTube or whatever, or saw a few videos. No, this is an accomplished man that's been around for a long time. The likes of Dr. Phil Valentine, they're all very familiar with him. They don't really talk about him because I think he touches on certain things that they don't want to touch. And I've had Dr. Valentine on my show a few times. Get his book, because one thing he focuses on is how do we take the information from back then and update it today? Because you got to remember, a lot of that stuff is outdated in the sense it doesn't really apply today, but the essence of the teachings does. But how do you take that in 2018? See, a living doctrine is something that changes with the times. See, when you're teaching the true and living information, I don't want to just learn dead people shit. How do I take that and apply it today and still make it apply? So it's always constant work. This path is about doing work. It's not just about reading books, sitting in lectures, and hearing shit that puffs your chest out and boosts your ego up. That's all some people really want. They don't really want to learn shit. So now they have a coffee table material. They can sit in their little circles and sound deep and heavy. I don't waste my time with that shit, because my one question is going to be to you after you go on and say, well, what results has that proven? Or what results have you gotten to transform your life? So I should see a living example. You shouldn't be struggling. You understand? I'm not talking about struggling in the sense things happen. I'm talking about individuals that are constantly in a same rut. They're spiritual and deep, but their families are fucked up. They can't keep a good, healthy relationship. They can't keep a good career. You know, their lives are all jacked up. See, that's right there. Your spirit is communicating to you something is out of whack. The work on this path is identifying it and going to work on it. See, that's how we work on this path. When we say the path to self-mastery, how can we improve ourselves on all levels, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically? Physically is important too. Let's not negate that, right? We all want to go spiritual and spook, but let's not negate diet and exercise and eating the right foods. And again, I'm not going to preach and lecture, to people about that, because I get questions on that all the time. I don't really believe you need to go to the extreme. A lot of it is common sense and discipline. You need to know things within moderation. I mean, people pay people to get on all these diets and get personal trainers and shit. It's basically common sense if you apply. But hold on, I'm gonna miss some questions up here. Donda Sufra, taking responsibility for everything, good ups and fuck ups, 100%. And that's the other thing we've talked about a bunch of times on this path. We don't blame nobody for our shit. We don't sit around and play the blame game. We take responsibility for all of our successes, and we take responsibilities for our failures. We don't point fingers, because that's what a weak individual does, finds excuses of why they're not successful. We don't sit around whining and complaining. We do shit about it. You understand? You're in the situation you're in because you put yourself there. I'm going to say that again. I don't want that to get misconstrued. You're in the situation because you put yourself in the situation. You might think sometimes, well, no, I'm in a situation now that was beyond my control. To an extent, it wasn't. What were the things that led up to getting into that situation? And sometimes we don't analyze those. That's why I said earlier, you're where you're supposed to be, because that's where you're supposed to be. People don't really understand when dealing with the concept of time, right? In metaphysics and quantum physics, right? We deal with the now, right? The only thing that matters is now. See, you're under the illusion that tomorrow is going to come. You've been so programmed and indoctrinated, you really believe that when you go to sleep tonight, tomorrow morning is guaranteed to come. That's how easy it is to fuck with the mind. What happened yesterday and 2 weeks from now, what's getting ready to happen, all affects what you do right now. If you take care of the now, the rest takes care of itself. See, we're so busy looking in the past, right? And then looking ahead, and we don't focus on the now. See, a true magician deals with the now because the now is the only thing that's real. You understand? And as we broke down that whole thing with time, right? Time is an illusion. Time is what keeps most people in a state of ignorance, because there is no such thing as time as they teach it, right? Because I likened it to taking a rock and throwing it into a body of water. When that rock hits the body of water, ripples expand out from the center, right? Time is constantly expanding and contracting. When this live feed started an hour ago, let's say, that is still expanding and contracting out into the universes. That incident is still, it constantly is. That's the science of the now. You need to understand that as a magician, especially when working magic, because that gives you the innate ability to tap into whatever you need to tap into. Think hard on that and it'll come. This is why one of the first things that you must be retaught in working spiritual magic, that there is no time barriers. The Black Adept, by breaking the plane of 3 dimension and going in on the quantum in the 5th, can tap into any realm they want, be it by astral travel, whatever, higher states of meditation, whatever you want to, in any system that works for you. Once you're able to vibrate outside of person, place, and thing, you are now not confined to things on 3-dimensional that keep you confounded, that keep you ignorant, that keep you not knowing, that keep you, controlled by certain things. What I mean by controlled by certain things is struggling with certain concepts. You understand? People still struggle with who and what is God, right? They on this path, I'm saying, and they still struggle with that. And you have to understand, I'm going to read, I'm going to get to that in a minute, but you have to understand the highest deity on this path, and that's why I keep saying it, is you, the adept, him or her, all right? Let me see if I missed anything else here. Oh, peace, Jonathan Hernandez. I'm trying to go down in order. Yeah, right. Good comment. Right. Rich GTV 305 type that back in days is an epidemic that most niggas suffer that shit. They know all the history of dinosaurs. That's so true. They know that's my whole point. What I was saying earlier. Man, I'm glad you hit on that, brother. I'm glad you hit on that, because you know what that shit starts to sound like to me nowadays. Look, I'm gonna be 47 years old in June. Okay, so don't be fooled. I've been around the block. I don't feel a necessity to talk to that. I've probably been in every circle you could fucking imaginably conceive of, and that's what that shit sounds like to me, brother Rich. I know they might have erased your comment because some of the words you typed in, but if you can't see it, it's just a YouTube thing. They got this censor thing. If you type certain words in, profanity or something, they'll automatically erase it now. So I don't think they can see your comment, but what Rich typed in, long story short, how cats will break down dinosaurs and molecules and how the earth was formed. This is my point. But then the brother wants to pull away from the cipher driving a Pinto and shit that's on its last leg. Don't you see the imbalance in that shit? How you going to sit here and break down how deep and heavy you are and you're God and you're this and you're that, but you pulling away in a broken down, crusty ass car? You understand? And you get ready to go to your job at Home Depot. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not saying that to knock. You do what you got to do to make a living. I want to make it clear. Whatever it is you need to do to get paid, you do it. But what I'm saying is put things into perspective. Some people come off like jackasses because their ego gets the best of them. So they think they know shit because they read a book on how dinosaurs came about. And I'll be sitting in the conversation like this, and brother wants to sound deep and he's using all these big words and, blah, 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 this, that, and the molecular structure of the blah, blah, blah. And you're listening to this shit and I'm just waiting, waiting. And I just usually wait till they finished and then the question's coming. And if you can give me a practical answer to that question, then I say, okay, I get it, brother. I get it, sister. You read a lot of books. That's it. You read a lot of books. Cool. But my path is a little deeper than being a walking encyclopedia or a dictionary or a historical book. And that's the difference, how you decipher who's doing work and who's not. It's that simple. That's the individual that's not doing any work. That's the brother or sister that just watches videos on YouTube or goes down to their local African bookstore and buys a few books, or is walking through the streets of New York and goes up to a conscious brother's table and gets a few DVDs. And then he goes home and pops them in. And now he learned about genetically modified foods. And now he learned about, what the white man did to them in slavery. And now he's going to sit there and break down you postmortem slave syndrome and all this other shit, right? And then I say, yeah, brother, that's deep. That's heavy, brother. But what is that doing for you in your cipher? Because, see, as I broke down before, when you break down ciphers, 360, 360, 720, remember there's an inner cipher and there's an outer cipher. Most motherfuckers are controlled by the cipher that's going around the inner cipher. They just don't know it, right? Somebody referred to it a few days ago as the matrix, right? I don't think sometimes people bring shit up and I don't think they understand what they're talking about. But, you could always let a fool will hang himself. All you got to do is just keep letting them, expose themselves. Work. That's true. And love my fro. It's okay to be a book junkie. I'm a book junkie. Shit, look, I just got something sitting right in front of me. Look, it's just a few. I'm not saying not to be a book junkie. I'm not saying study your ass off. You should read everything, even read about shit you don't like so you can educate yourself to it. Because how can you correct shit and teach shit, especially shit you may not like, if you're not educated to it? It's okay to be a book junkie. Study, but as long as you're applying the information. I've been a book junkie since I love books. I always have, even as a little kid in school, before I was even on this path. I always was with a book. I mean, I can go back to when I was in 3rd, 4th grade and always fascinated with being in the library and just the feel that. That's why I'm not really on this digital shit. I like to hold a book in my hand. It's just something about holding a book in your hand. It's not the same thing when you're reading it on your tablet or your phone or your laptop, which I do have some stuff saved in digital format, but it's not like holding a book in your hand. There's nothing can replace it. So, by all means, be a book junkie, study, but make sure you're applying the information. There's nothing wrong with that. All right. Straight Panther 79. That's the point. So far, I've learned that I don't know shit. Well, there's the old saying, a wise man knows he knows nothing. That's step one. That's real wisdom, right? A wise man knows he knows nothing. See, where you get fucked up is, and what doesn't mean when you're making that statement, a wise man knows, it doesn't mean you don't know anything. It just means that you're humble and you're always open to learning. So I'm sure Straight Panther 79, you know a lot of shit, but I understand where you're coming from. I know what you mean. When you approach knowledge with that mentality, like when I'm amongst certain elders, I humble myself. And I could see and recognize the wisdom. When you recognize somebody's wisdom, right? As the nations of gods on earth say, that's doing the knowledge, right? You got to be able to recognize somebody's wisdom, especially by their wise words and actions. And if they're proving it, that wisdom by their wise words and actions, if you claim to be a god, you got to learn to humble yourself and sometimes absorb. So I know how to do that in certain circles. But at the same token, you don't lower yourself to somebody that's fucking beneath you. That's a whole nother story. So there's a time to pull that can of whoop ass out or that sword and chop some heads off when need be, when provoked. There are times for that. You understand? But that's what it's all about, being able to recognize that and put it into perspective. But that's a good point, Straight Panther 79. We got some good questions on here today. I'm going to try to get to most of them. All right. Let me see. Yeah, Mossberg 451. I love that one too. Oh man. People always, whether it's religious or people in the Kemetic community or people in Black conscious movements, anytime they fail at something, the devil did it. That's so true. We understand the history, quote unquote, of the devil. I'm not saying racism and all that shit don't exist. I'm not saying, but we have the tools and the knowledge. People give this devil character more power than's actually attributed to. So people will say white supremacy. The very fact that you say that and believe that, that's your problem right there. Supremacy comes from the word supreme. When you're putting that out into the ethers, you're giving it power. right? Stop giving it more power than there's actually to it. Because you can't say you're a god or a goddess, but yet something that came way after you and is much weaker in mental and spiritual power you're claiming has a hold on you. Remember, the black adept controls his immediate surroundings first. Most people that don't grasp that concept struggle because they're trying to save the whole fucking world and they can't save themselves first. See, if you start first in your immediate surroundings, it starts to branch out. You won't have to use that. It was the devil. I'm not successful because the devil or the white man is keeping me down. Look, racism it exists. Shit, look at our president. It exists. It's real. But if you're on this path, it should not slow you down from achieving what you need to achieve, because it does not disturb your immediate surroundings and environment if you're doing things right. Does it affect globally as a whole? Most definitely. But then you're not doing your job if you're not in control of your cipher, for lack of a better word. All right. So, yeah, we don't use that excuse either. Accountability is the key in the left-hand path. Straight up, Brother Jack. Agree with that. You put yourself there, you can get yourself out. That's another good point. That's what I meant earlier when I said you are where you're supposed to be because you put yourself there. Why? How did you put yourself there? By your decisions and the actions you made to lead you up until that point. Now, it might have been something at the time you thought was harmless. So I'm not saying that of course, no individual sets out to maliciously put themselves in a bad situation. That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes, like, let me give you an example. You might get 2 job offers or something, or you might get a promotion on one job, right? And then say another offer comes along. Let me just give you an example. So I just want to make sure we're clear on this. You're wrestling with the fact that maybe you got more stability with this company, but this company is offering more. But you look at the history of this company, they're not as stable as the company you're with. You follow where I'm going with this? But you're going with the money for the moment. And even though something within you is telling you may not be a good idea to go there and stay where you're at, you decide to go there, right? And you still feel like something's wrong. But then you start out at first, everything is good. But then all of a sudden the shit starts to, fall back. Things start to happen. So what I'm saying is, though your intent might not have been to put yourself in that situation, but by your decision and your actions, you placed yourself there. So what the black adept, and I'm using that as one simple metaphor, what the black adept realizes, when I said earlier, that's why we take responsibility for our successes and our failures, and we blame nothing or nobody, okay? Nothing or nobody. Now, look, here's something random. If you're walking home and you just get robbed randomly at point, right? Is that your fault? Yes and no. If you're walking in an area that you know that's high in crime, then yeah, you put yourself in that situation to an extent. It's not your fault that you were randomly targeted. But what I'm saying is, we're always going to find that our actions and decisions is what puts us in a certain situation. So I'm not talking about random acts of, let's say, nature, right? When a hurricane or tornado or earthquake comes ripping through, they don't give a shit where it's going. They're not looking for anybody, any individual. It just happens. But if you live in California, right? You live in California knowing a possibility that an earthquake can happen. So if an earthquake comes and destroys your area, you know this. There's a possibility. I'm down here now in South Florida where hurricanes are prevalent. I know that. That's the risk I take. You understand? No matter where you live, there's something. So we don't look at it when something happens. We just look at it, all right, something happened. How do we fix it? Right? We don't spend the time, because that's the other problem people got. People can always tell you what the problem is, right? Especially in conscious circles. They all tell you what the problem is, but nobody got a damn solution. All they want to do is tell you about what was done to you in slavery, what the white man did, and this and that, and back in the day this, and blah, blah, blah. And shit starts sounding like Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah. And then you go, all right, so what's the plan of action moving forward? And look, don't confuse having a goal and a plan with what your duty is. Let me explain. People always come up with the thing is, try to teach and educate our people. That's your duty. That's not a goal. To teach and educate as a god or a goddess, that's your duty. That's your responsibility. That is not a goal. People confuse that shit. What is the goal, the plan moving forward to overcome it? Don't confuse the two. because I get the same old rehearsed ass answer. Well, teach and educate, that's your duty. Because to have knowledge is to know, and with that knowledge comes responsibility to teach. What good is that knowledge if you're just holding it to yourself? Then you got a personal agenda. So we're not talking about your responsibility and duty. That's your duty to teach. If you know, what's the goal, the plan for solution? Now all of a sudden you hear crickets and shit. What's the economic plan? You can't fight a war with no money. How you going to sit here and talk about what the white man is doing and you ain't even got an army to fight the white man? And I'm not going to get on YouTube and talk about that. That's a whole nother story, man. You got cats that get on YouTube and talk about what they're going to do to the white man. They're on the white man's platform. We're on the white man's platform right now. He monitors everything here. I utilize just to get information out. I'm not interested in that. I'm not going to get on YouTube and go on a rant about what we're going to do to the government and this and that. You ain't going to do a motherfucking thing. That's the reality. It's all talk. I was part of all those fucking pro-black militia movements back in the day. You understand? And they still talking the same shit back in the 80s that they talking today. What you waiting for? When are you waiting to take it? If you ain't got enough of shit going on now to take it to the streets and start a war, you full of shit. You know what the problem is? They waiting for somebody else to do it so they can jump in later. That's why I don't fuck with none of that shit no more. It's all talk, jibber jabber. That's all that shit is. And your question, Rich, that brings all that up. So I'm glad you brought that to the surface because that's 100% true. All right, let's get back to some of these other questions. Blah, 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 blah. All right, John, how does one control their own? This is a really good question. All right. How does one control their own thoughts and emotions? I find myself compulsively doing drugs and feeling irritable and lethargic while I know what I'm doing is hurting me. I find it hard to stop. That's real tough. The very fact, well, step one, obviously, Brother Jonathan, you've identified it. But obviously, knowing this and identifying it, obviously, you're not taking steps you need to help yourself and get better. Now, again, I don't want to speak out of things I don't know. I don't know your personal situation. I don't know your surroundings. I don't know what kind of family and friends you got around you. But I would start with, is it the company you keep in? Are you surrounding yourself with people that keep you in that environment? You know what I'm saying? Have you made an effort? I'm not talking about some of these programs where they just, induce you with drugs and make the situation worse. There are some natural people that, holistically that deal with addictions and things of that nature the proper way. There are good programs if you find the right program that's geared towards your spirituality to help you with that. It does exist. So I would say step one, start with your surroundings and your environment. If you're hanging around people that's keeping you in that influence, that's not going to help. That's step one. Obviously your emotions, I don't know what kind of drugs that you're doing. If it's hallucinogens and things of that nature, that's going to have a whole different effect on your nervous system, the hippocampus area of your brain, spiritual impressions, and it's going to weigh down on your hormones. And it's definitely going to make you feel all the things you were saying, irritable, lethargic, tired, drained, etc. The list goes on and on. We got to identify. And again, I don't want to get into your personal situation in a forum like this because I don't really think it's proper. So in a nutshell, you really need to have an outline of what's going on and then a plan on how to attack it. But I'm going to be honest with you, discipline is going to be the hard thing. Staying, consistent with trying to get yourself on the right track. You understand? Now, again, I'm no doctor. I wouldn't want to give you misinformation. I can only, impart upon you wisdom that I do know and similar people that went through it. But you got to want to make the, long story short, you got to want to make the intent to get right. You understand what I'm saying? It starts there. And unfortunately, I'm gonna be honest with you, that's not always an easy thing. So, I would look into basics first, your surroundings, your family. What things are you doing that keeps you, feeling like that or in that cycle? And start from there. And I would really find a program. I don't know where you located. You can maybe inbox me. I can maybe refer you to somebody in your area. Because again, that's what this path is about. It's about getting things right that you need right about yourself. And I can relate to you. But step one is at least you've recognized you got a problem, and at least you recognize you are hurting yourself, but you're struggling with stopping. That's, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And I'm not going to say it's easy. I'm not going to paint, a bullshit picture for you because it's not. But again, I don't want to get too personal in here because I don't think this is the right format, but I appreciate you being honest. And if there's anything, if anybody else may be listening, might know something to help with that, you might want to reach out to the brother too, or maybe a program. And when I say a program, sometimes we go into these programs that make us worse. All they do is put you on more prescription drugs. And here's the thing you got to realize, okay? And as we were talking the other day about noro and neuromelanin, we're talking about the neuromelanin, everything that coats the central nervous system. Remember, synthetic drugs are the worst things you can put into your neuromelanin. It destroys it. They know this, and this is why they're quick to put blacks and Latinos on prescription drugs, because they know the synthetics and the drugs destroy and break down the neuromelanin. It disconnects you from all that consciousness, your spirituality, and it sometimes can make a person even worse. You understand? And so you got to be careful. So if you do find a drug treatment program, there are a couple good ones out. Like they got a I think it's Awakenings. There's one here in South Florida from people I know that have been in. It's very good, and they have more of a natural approach. Then I know the cost factor comes in. But anyway, I'd be willing to, if there's anything I can come up with, assist you with that. If there's anybody listening, if they can help the brother out, that's what we're supposed to do, help him out and see. So I hope that helps you, brother. That's the best thing I can tell you in an open forum like this. Well, I hope it pushes you in the right direction, and, and if there's anything we can do. Straight Panthers kind of, resurfacing some of the things I said. Do a self-check assert. Master student. I think that was probably in reference to something we were talking about earlier. Love Sky types in, one thing I caught myself doing was regurgitating everything. Oh, you're not the only one. I learned from videos or books to people close to me, but had no experience of my own. The work is difficult but necessary. That's an excellent point. We all were guilty of that at some point, including myself back in the day. That's what led me to this path. I realized I knew my shit, but I realized I know all this shit, but I'm not seeing the results of it. That's why I was saying all the things I was saying earlier. Whether it was, being in, the nation of gods and earths, I still to this day, and still get great stuff out of it. Whether it was back in the day being an Ansar, a part of the Nubian, all that shit. Studying Kemetic studies, going into the Masonic Lodge, going into OTO, going into the Rosicrucian Order, going through the, raising yourself up through the 12 degrees. I realized I had all this shit down packed. I was going through all these different spiritual systems. I mastered them, served as masters in some of these orders, ran the lodges. I said, man, I'm doing all this shit, I quote unquote, and you hit it on the head. I just realized I had a lot of information that I could regurgitate, but I wasn't able to really take any of it outside. I'm not talking about on a mundane level where, now and we understand you're teaching yourself quote unquote truthful and factual information. But then the question is, what is truth? That's a whole nother story. But I was in that boat, and that's what kind of motivated me to look even deeper. I don't want to be up under nobody no more. I'm not interested in being part of a Mickey Mouse club or a group. I'm not interested in being part of anybody's circle. I'm not going to be a part of anything where somebody's going to try to tell me how to think or try to tell me that what I'm saying is incorrect because they belong to some group that says this is the right way. Fuck all that shit. If that's what you choose to do, that's fine. And again, you don't got to agree with everything I say. I couldn't give two flying shits if you agree with what I say. I know what I do is it works because I get the results, and you don't have to agree with what I do or say. I don't want anybody to agree or do what I say. I want you to create your own path of self-mastery that takes you down to your own person, because my path is not going to work for you and vice versa. Some things might be similar, yes, but is everything I do going to work for you? Absolutely not. But I'll be damned if somebody's going to sit here and tell me some bullshit about Egypt and this is it. And this, like, I remember a few months back, well, it might have been last year, or end of last year, and in the conscious community on all those platforms, Signetter and all them, they're arguing over Was the Metronetter translated, and can you translate it and speak it? Who the fuck cares? Because how's that going to benefit you in 2018? Other than the fact, all right, was it or wasn't it? Yeah, a great fucking coffee and donut conversation. But is that going to put money in your pocket? Is that going to make your life successful? When are you actually going to use Metronetter in this day and time? What skill set is that going to give you other than the fact that you know some fucking history? See, nobody wants to attack it on that level. Now, if that's your thing, that's your thing. But don't get mad when I say I couldn't give two flying shits if the Metronetter was translated or not. Because in 2018, it's going to do absolutely nothing for me knowing that. You understand? And I got my own perspective on the Metronetter. But I'm not going to get into that here because I don't want to get into all that fluffy shit. Okay? But good point. Love Sky. We were all on that boat at one time. Scapegoat. I find that funny. Dundar Sufferer, right? The scapegoat, right? That's one of the terms they use or definitions for Azazel, right? Right? Who really was the scapegoat to save people that belong to the religion of monotheism, Christianity? Think about this for a minute now. Who really was the scapegoat? Who really was the savior? Who really took the burdens of the people on their shoulders? Because people still use, religious people will blame the devil or Azazel, one of his titles, which means the scapegoat, right? But the scapegoat, or ties back into the goat, we got to be careful how they throw this shit at us. I know this is opening doors to other shit. Baphomet, right? You can get into the goat-faced man, right? What does Baphomet represent? Totality, equilibrium, balance, masculine and feminine, androgyny, right? Earth, wind, air, fire, opening of the crown chakra, right? This is all the symbol. Baphomet, as I said a few days back, is not an actual deity. Get that shit out your head. It's a symbol. That's it. That's why everybody call. This is why I'm wearing a Baphomet symbol right now. It's one of the most powerful occult symbols when you know how to work with it. So I know that just opened the door because it triggered certain parts of my mind. When I hear scapegoat, this is how this path works. It triggered a whole bunch of different things. Somebody else will hear scapegoat. I'm not saying that's how you meant it, but somebody else will hear scapegoat and a spooked out person, and they'll go to religious bill on you. But a good point. People will use that as an escape. Another comment by Rich GTV 305. Black Adept prepares you for anything and everything from the mundane to the spiritual. Most definitely. You will go through some shit on this path. You will be challenged. You will face some hardships. And let me stress this shit. Don't put yourself in the illusion that coming on this path that things get easier for you. See, that's where you fuck up. See, people will think now that I'm on this path, I'm not going to have the problems I used to have. No, you won't, because you'll have the ability to solve them in that sense. But with that comes, as I said earlier, responsibility. Shit going to come at you 10 times harder because there's going to be a lot of people. Let me give you an example. Your circle of friends more likely will change because most people ain't going to be able to connect with you no more because they're going to be caught up in whatever bullshit or nonsense they're in, be it religion or they're super African or super Kemetic, and they think they know everything. You're going to run into that bullshit. You're going to you yourself will go through a period. And I'm going to tell you this, one person, or most people, I should say, I always go through this in the beginning stages. They feel like there's a period where they're very alone or disconnected from everything and everybody. And I always tell people when that happens to them when they first come on this path, that's confirmation you're on the right path. You want to know why? Because that is going to be one of your strongest growing points in your life. You will go through that much of a transition where everything in your life changes. Sometimes it even gets to the point you might realize you're in the wrong marriage. You're in the wrong career. Your whole world can get turned upside down because remember, this path brings the change you need, not the change you want. And understand the difference. So don't come into this path with preconceived notions that I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this type of magic here and I'm going to get. You should come into this path because you want the real you. Come to the self-realization of who and what you really are. That's the purpose of coming on this path. And sometimes it's not what you built up about yourself over the years. And that could be a hard pill to swallow for certain individuals. You might have thought, I know, like I said, man, look, I went through the whole Kemetic thing. I know a lot of brothers that they love Egypt because that's what they identify with. But then they come to the reality, well, maybe just there's a little more to this than just Egypt. You understand? Just because you like something doesn't mean the shit is right. You understand? You do something because it produces results. So yeah, it prepares you for everything. People say, oh, where is not sure. And I guess that Love My Fro, I guess that was in reference to Jonathan, his location and state. Maybe he can, if he can privately maybe inbox people and get that information, maybe we can get some help, whatever we can do on our end. I believe that's what that was for earlier. Baffle Margaret types in, yup, now, hold on, I lost it. Yup, now I'm 52 and my medicine cabinet stays free from prescription drugs. I prefer to let my body heal itself along with the knowledge of self, etc. I agree. Now, by all means, you should only have to take medicine. I want to make this clear. You should always try to heal yourself first. You should always try to take care of the situation first, no doubt. If you are in critical situation, life or death, and you have to take some medicine, take it to get you to at least restore you to the point where you can now do the maintenance yourself. So by all means, I want to make it clear. If it's mandatory and you've absolutely tried everything, you know, and you need to do what you need to do. I'm not saying, because again, I don't want to give information as if I'm a doctor. And I know that's not what you meant, Sister Baffle Margaret, because what you said is 100% correct. I'm just speaking for people that are listening. If you are in a dire situation and you have no choice, take it to get you back to a normal state and then maintain it from that point. But always try to take care of things if you can yourself. And a good person to actually, you might want to touch on that. Sister Sonia deals with that. She's just done some work with that, which I ain't going to get into here. But she deals with a lot. And I'm not sure if she's still on here because I can't. Can I see who's in the chat? Oh, participants. Yeah, I can. Okay. But yeah, Sister Sonia, if she's still on here, she works. That's her area of specialty. She works with like healing herbs, crystals. She creates. She's still here. She creates different herbs, candles, healing crystals, and she's pretty good at it. She is here. If you see her name, she's on there, R. Sonia. You can actually inbox her, and she actually is just in the beginning stages of getting her company going. And she's actually starting now selling to certain people. She's getting her website and everything up and running. She is doing some, things on the side. So she'd be the person I would contact in reference to herbs and candles. And she does that shit constantly. When I tell you constantly, most of her free time is devoted to that. And that's the other thing we got to do. We got to get ourselves educated to the people around us because we got a lot of talent amongst us and we're not even conscious of it. But I would definitely, you can see, if you guys see her in here, you can inbox her and she could probably give you some information on that. But that's a good point, Baffle Margaret. Val Farad Thor, that's a very interesting name. This might not be the right form to ask it, but some occult magic books call for self-bloodletting or fingerprint rituals. Is this necessary? No, that's an excellent question. It's up to you personally. In vampirism, and I'm going to throw some books out there in a minute. I know I keep saying I'm going to get to it. That's a real good question, Val Farad. I think in certain scenarios, like in certain rituals to do pacts, it kind of adds more power and strength to the ritual. Is it necessary? No. It's personal. Now, sometimes people will use it like if they're making a pact on parchment paper, they might prick their finger, let a little blood drip on that personal contract they might have made with the specific work they're doing and roll it up and seal it. As long as you're not harming yourself or doing anything, off the wall, we never want to harm anything or anybody on this path. That's just my experience and my outlook on it. But is it necessary? No, not at all. It's a personal choice. If you feel like you're doing a specific ritual and it's going to enhance the power of it, power to you. Just, do it within moderation and reason. And that's not that's a good question. But on the left-hand path, we do not harm animals. We do not believe in blood sacrifice. Don't confuse that with what, some of these quote unquote satanic cults do. That's not real left-hand path. A real left-hand practitioner never wants to harm women, children, animals, or any individual. Okay, it's completely unnecessary. And even in vampirism, vampirism is not the actual drinking of blood. We went over that. It's the absorption of energy. It's a whole different thing. All right. But that's a good question. The name is very interesting. I'm not sure how you came up with that, because three things come to mind. But hey, that's if that's something personal that holds significance to you, power to you. All right. So what else we got here? All right. Alchemista, coffee, donut combo. Oh, that was earlier. Don does suffer, right? Don had greater strength, greater challenges. Excellent point. Yes, Rabbi. Let me see if I mixed any questions. Just Sister Sonia put her email in there for anybody. If you do, you should be able to see it. But yeah, the contact her is ravenhecker@gmail.com. Again, that's RAVENHEKA@gmail.com. Ravenhecker@gmail.com. You can contact her there. And trust me, she's pretty good. Baphomarga, I realize that people on this path are so afraid to lead themselves and do their own spiritual work. This path has made me eager to empower and heal myself. We must remove the choke of spookism. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much nothing really to add to that. You pretty much said it. Now, I know, like Sister Baphomarga obviously got a little more experience on this path. Challenges. There will always be challenges. Okay? Don't fool yourself. But the difference is you are now equipped with the tools to deal with those challenges. Whereas before, when hardships, obstacles, and difficulty comes, you get consumed by it because you don't have the tools. Oh, yes, as a matter of fact, let me mention too, Sister Baphomarga creates jewelry. I forgot about that. Matter of fact, there's a piece I got to get you. So I got to send you an email and get prices on it. Sister Baphomarga creates all different pieces. Again, we got people amongst us, we don't even know what they do. She could even take a current chain that you have and create a special piece for it. That's her specialty. That's her field. And I know she's working on her website, but she can actually send you some examples of pieces she's done to me in the past. And I've been meaning to get with her. But Sister Baphomarga, why don't you put your email in there too, so people might be interested in that. She actually took, I think, Brother Ron Noon's Baphomet and hooked it up with a nice link piece. That's what she does. So I'll have her, maybe she can hear me. She can put her email in there, and those that might be interested in looking at the pieces she makes. And in addition, you might have a current piece that you want to kind of jazz up a bit. And she does that too. I've seen some of her work. It's good stuff. So just want to throw that out there. I totally forgot about that since we're on that subject. But yeah, like I was saying, you're equipped now to deal with those challenges. But real quick, let me get to some of the books, because some people, I'm doing this because it's easy for me to just flash them. I want to make this. There's Baphomarga's email. Baphomarga, BAFAMARGA 999 @gmail.com. All right, that's BAFAMARGA 999 @gmail.com. No problem. You're welcome. So hit the sister up if you're looking for a special piece, or you want to fix up a piece that you might currently have and you want to just put a nicer chain on it, or she could add to it. So hit her up. All right. Some people have emailed me about books on vampirism and the left-hand path. I received some emails today. Some might be in the room, some might not. But just so when the video posts, I just want people to understand this. Between consultations, it's hard for me to get to all my emails. Like after this, I got 2 later tonight, and then the next 2 days, I pretty much have 5 or 6 consultations. And just for that too, for the spiritual consultations, at least give me a 48-hour window. Some people, want to get it the same day. It's possible for me to do it the same day. I usually am the way I have it set up, I can do it about 2 days out. And just so you know, so you don't have to email me, what is a consultation? How does it work? I know you've been saying in the videos, I explain it in there. I try to avoid that step. It's basically, it costs $52 to do. And here's the other reason. Somebody asked, Is it $2 because of a fee? Yes, they charge a processing fee when I transfer the money. So it's actually 50, but I charge 52, so it covers the processing fee. Long story. Yeah, that's just how it works when you transfer money. Square. That's why it's 52. Somebody asks, is there a spiritual significance? No, there's no. The spiritual significance is to cover the fee. I just thought that was funny. But anyway, the consultation lasts up until an hour, and there's two different things that can be done so people understand. Some people prefer a system of divination, either reading stones, cards. If you want a specific card reading and stone reading on a specific, that can be done. Or consultation. Sometimes if you can't get to me personally, I do it on either Skype or Google Hangouts privately, and you can pretty much discuss whatever. It's basically a one-on-one. What tends to happen is certain spirits or things will come through in the consultation. I'll relate that to you. Whatever information comes that you need to do, I pass that information on to you. But here's the key, though. I want to make this clear. You do the shit yourself, okay? I'm just going to tell you what comes through. You'll get the information. You gather up the materials you need to gather, and the work that you need to do, you will do it yourself. Remember, this is a path to self-mastery. I ain't going to do shit for you. That's the difference of how I work then, and I'm not knocking other people that, do spiritual. Everybody, there's a lot of people doing it now. But those that have worked with me in the past know that's how I operate and work. I'm going to give you the information you need, but you're going to actually set out and do the shit yourself. And if you do it, trust me, you will get the results. I don't need to put testimonials up and all that shit because I think that's a bunch of garbage. The only way you're going to find out is actually doing it yourself. And I stand behind what I do because it's practical based. Yeah, I'm not providing you fluff or pie in the sky. Because that's what a lot of these individuals do. So again, if you can't get to me personally, it can be done on social media platform. It can be paid for either PayPal or the day of on the phone with a card. But just give me a 2-day window, all right? Because that's what I'm saying. When it's hard for me to get to all the emails. It's impossible. Between running a business, doing this, working, I wouldn't have time to sit down in front of a computer. And so I try to answer questions in the videos as a whole. So if you're watching the video and maybe I didn't, now some people I know personally, I had kind of established a relationship with them, so I'm able to get with them, but I can't do that with everybody. All right, so these are some of the vampire books. A couple people sent an email. What are good books on vampirism? This was the author of I couldn't remember the other day. This is Michelle Bellinger, the Vampire Ritual book. Excellent book. And this will clear a lot of the myths and spookism on what real vampirism is. This was the one I was talking about the other day. A couple people emailed me about Father Sebastian, Vampire Magic. Excellent book. This will help you if this is a path you choose, which is a high, and connects it hardcore to ancestral worship, which I love. Because as those that know me know, I work with ancestral worship, and that's the foundation. But you can come up with some good shit on your own after reading this particular book. All right. Another one by Father Sebastian, Vampirum Sanguinamicon, which is, I hate to use the word Bible. It's like the Bible on vampirism. This covers everything. This is a really good read. All right. And that author's name is Father Sebastian. Okay. That's if you go on Amazon, just Google it, it'll come right up. I know a couple people had mentioned Michael W. Ford. I don't read all of his shit. Also get Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum's book, Dark Light Consciousness. Somebody emailed me. We were talking about the Moors, the early presence of Africans in America. I'd get that by Dr. Ivan Van Sertimer. Ivan Van Sertimer is probably a lot of people are familiar with him, but I don't think he gets enough of credit. Dr. Sertimer, to me, is probably a leading scholar on the whole Moorish Native American thing. I think he doesn't get a lot of the attention because people might or might not be aware of he was married to a Caucasian woman. And I think, this is just my opinion, I think he doesn't get the attention because of that. But if you're looking, somebody had emailed me, what's a good book on Native Americans and Moors and the presence of the Moors in early America. And Ivan Van Sertimer's got a bunch of videos on YouTube. You can even see some combined work he's done with Dr. Jeffries and Dr. Ben. But to me, he's the one that hit it on the head. The main two books I fuck with Michael W. Ford, and I read everything. I don't care if they're black, white, Asian, and I come up with my own shit. Second of Pep, I know we've talked about this a lot. This is a really good book. This deals with Set Typhonian magic, a lot of Egyptian magic. I only fuck with the books that he puts out on Egyptian magic because I'm not really interested in Luciferian magic. But some of his other shit I don't really care for, and that's okay. But this book he put out here, this book has a lot. These rituals come from a lot of the ancient Egyptian text, the pyramid text, coming forth by day. Actually, a lot of incantations that were written and the spells that were written in these texts. And you can come up with a lot of, like, there's rituals in here, healing the Black Adept, the Triad of Light and Darkness. All this stuff is in here. And it's actually from the works of Charles Pace. And he makes that clear who was one of his influences. And this is Necronomicon. Not Necronomicon, don't confuse the two. Necrominyon, okay? People confuse the two. And this is Egyptian Sethian magic. This deals with the black magical aspect of ancient Egypt, okay? Somebody had asked me, which I plan on doing some videos on Hollywood movies and a lot of the occult symbols. There's a lot of people that have read this book and take information out of it. I'm not going to say any names, but they act like they're coming up with the shit themselves. I would recommend you get this book by Jay Dyer. It's called Esoteric Hollywood. He breaks down new movies and old movies. He breaks down all the occult symbols, the movie The Shining. There's so much. Read the book. This book will blow you away. Again, it's Jay Dyer. I'm actually trying to get him to come on the show. It's called Esoteric Hollywood, Sex, Cults, and Symbols in Film. He breaks down the whole nine. He breaks down, his specialty is seeing the occult symbols in movies, and he goes in deep on it. Somebody had emailed me about that book as they heard me talk about it in the video. But that's the book, Esoteric Hollywood, Sex, Cults, and Symbols in Film. I've done a few shows on that. Somebody has requested maybe we can deal with the occult aspect of Hollywood. That's something I'm looking into. All right. I'm going to take a few more questions and wrap this up. I'm another 15, 20. I see I got a couple questions here from, make sure I'm not butchering the name. Neil Das Gupta. Hope I pronounced that correct and didn't butcher it. If it's relevant, could you give some idea when one takes up magical name and gets initiated in a system, and down the line a year want to change it to another system, does that need reinitiation? That's a good question. I'll answer the first one. I see you got two. Yes and no. It depends on what you're coming through. Like, for an example, those that know me over the last 25 years, my name has probably changed about 5 or 6 times because of what you're saying. It is in a lot of systems when you get initiated or you, quote unquote, grow and go into a new system. Yes, you do usually go through some form of initiation, most definitely. And usually the elders give you the name for the most part. Sometimes you're required to choose your name. Let me give you an example. Again, I can only speak of my personal experience. When I went through the whole Islamic thing, when I took, quote unquote, my Shahada back in the early 80s, the name that I was given was Abdul Ghaffar Muhammad, which means servant of the forgiver, right? Ghaffar being Al-Ghaffar, one of the 99 attributes of Allah, right? Then as I grew and left that and I got into Hebrew mysticism, my name was changed to Yasar, right? Which means generous one, a friend, right? Because usually wherever you are in your spiritual initiation or journey, your name should signify the attributes and the characters you have. See, people take fucking names and they just take it because they like it, but it doesn't have anything to do with them. Matter of fact, that's what I was talking about earlier when we had that knucklehead, and I don't know if that person's still here. They take names like Heru or Osiris because they like it, but they can't live up to it. 2, it doesn't have anything to do with who and what they are. So you don't just take names because you like it. If you do select it yourself, make sure you understand what it means and it ties into your personality, your character, your nature, and you carry those attributes, okay? So then as I got into, a lot of people know me as Hafuz when I got into some of the Sumerian and Egyptian stuff back in the, I'm going to say that was the early 90s. And Brother Jack, I think, who's still here, he can attest to this. Then it was Hafuz, the Guardian, because at that time I was more on some warrior shit where the Guardian, protecting shit, correcting information. I was quick. I'll be honest with you, I was looking for debates back then. I used to fucking go looking for what's those dudes on the bikes? The Mormon cats that ride the bikes. So everybody at that period knew me as having a fiery spirit that I would go whatever lengths to protect anything. So they gave me the name, the Guardian, Hafuz, right? A lot of people still call me that because they know me from that period of time. All right. Then it changed from that to Kanum Zahuti Atum Re. That's when I went to a whole different transition where I was on some more mental shit. I was getting older. I was leaving a lot of that physical, emotional, young boy shit. Tossed that shit to the side. Kanum is an aspect, deals with creation, the fashioner, the molder. So it identified with what I was going through at that time. I'm giving you the quick story. Now the name Beniti. What does the name Beniti mean? Beniti Amun-Re means teacher of the hidden one. So now I'm on some old sit in the cut type of shit. Like, that's my vibe. I'll sit back and wait, and I'm the motherfucker that's going to stay silent and let you talk for 2 hours. Even though you guys see me on this platform and I talk a lot because that's what this platform is. But I'm that dude that I'll sit in that circle and I could be sitting there for 2 hours and you wouldn't have no clue what I do and do not know. And I'll wait for the right time to say what needs to be said. So Beniti Amun-Re means teacher of the hidden one. When you hear the name Beniti, this means teacher. Because I feel like now I'm older. And so that was a name given to me from the last thing, and that name was given. So long story short, yes, depending on what spiritual system you go through, usually there's some type of initiation where you're recognized. I mean, you can even go into the basic things like Masonry or African spirituality. There's always an initiation system for a higher degree. But that's usually more prominent in African spiritual traditions where you get a name. So yes. And usually the name, if an elder is giving you the name, this is actually a really good question. I'm glad you asked that because that's one thing people don't ask. I always ask people when I meet them, when they say, yeah, I'm like, I hear shit like, I'm Osiris, Ray, I say, cool, brother. That's a cool name. How did that come about? And they just give me some stupid ass answer. Well, I like Osiris and this and that. Yeah, but are you carrying what that name represents? Again, you might like it. You might be carrying an Osiris, but you got Anubis energy. You understand? So you might want to incorporate Anubu into your name. So always choose a name wisely. Don't just choose it because you like it, because you might be choosing something that doesn't identify with you. And understand this, when you're taking a name, you access the frequency of that name and everybody that carries that name. And sometimes you might be accessing an energy that's not conducive to you. So understand the input. There's many books out there on this. Just all you got to do is Google shit, choosing an African spiritual name, etc. Many authors come to mind. Many books, just can't think of them right. They're out there. But yes, that's actually a very good question. So choose a name wisely. All right. Yeah. So I got about a few more minutes. I don't think I missed any questions. I might have if I've missed you. And maybe there's a question I skipped. If you want to type it in. But yeah, so I kind of wanted to come on here, and I know that's the topic I chose. Oh, your second part. Let me go back up. You were right. I'm sorry. All right. Does one need to resign or magically disconnect with the previous group before proceeding further? Does it really matter energetically? And I can speak from this and experience. Yes and no. And I hate to keep using that term, yes and no. And again, I can only speak from my experience. You don't have to be exclusive. Like, for an example, I'm an 11th degree Rosicrucian. I'm only still in it because I got one more degree to go till I completely master it. So I'm not fully connected in the sense that I still attend all the gatherings and meetings. I go maybe once or twice a year, and I continue my personal study at home. So yes, you do need to disconnect as far as not being, maybe you were part of a group or organization or a spiritual system where you were exclusive to that. So when you grow and change, by all means, you can't be 100% exclusive to it no more. So that's why I say yes. No, in the sense you could still use some of those concepts, because some of the principles you will be able to take with you as you move on and apply it in your new path. Because there are, and again, I'm using, let's say, the Rosicrucian thing for an example. There are things in there that are timeless that you can still utilize, but the difference is, as you grow on your new path, you tend to perceive it and look at it differently. You're not going to quite look at it the same way you did maybe prior to that. So yes, you will have to disconnect on a wide scale level where you can't be exclusive to that no more, because then you'll never grow. But there will always be some things that you carry, and that's a really good question. I mean, these are really good questions. These are questions we should be asking. Like I said, I keep up on my studies, but energy-wise, I'm not divested in it anyway on any level like I used to be. I have it set up where it doesn't prevent me or distract me from moving forward in what I'm doing. And you as God or goddess have to be the moderator of how that's going to work for you, is what I'm trying to say. How much do you still stay connected to it? Or some people I know just don't want anything to do with it completely no more, and that's fine too. So, but you're going to be the person that's going to dictate on what level. I have taken a path where I can extract out of all of those spiritual systems and now apply it to left-hand path, because a lot of it is occult left-hand path principles just watered down. But now I can look at the Philosopher's Stone from a left-hand path Black Adept perspective, where I don't just look at it from a mystic perspective anymore. You understand? Like one of the things I did, and one of the things I did was I rewrote the whole 7 principles of Tahuti and what it means to me as a Black Adept. I did that for myself. You understand? So little things like that. It's just how much of a disconnect or non-disconnect you're going to put into place. That's going to be up to you. But you will definitely have to disconnect on a wide scale level. But that's a really good question. Okay, and that's good. You're just starting out. This is good form here. I have tons of videos. There's a lot of stuff you can research and look up. But you're in the right place if you're just starting out. John D. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about some funny ass shit. What archetypal characteristics does a PEP represent? This is a real good question. It's supposed to be primal chaos, correct, according to what I read. But how can we use that energy in relation to SETI and current? That's really good. I actually done a whole video on a PEP, the Serpent of Darkness. And I believe we did a whole radio show on this. A PEP, okay, like you said, the basic definition, he represents the primal chaos, right? A PEP, how a Black Adept applies this concept to themselves, not precept, that's the wrong word. All right, the reason why it ties into a SETI current is because Set, as I said, you may not have been on earlier, we were talking about Set, who represents the isolated consciousness of the Black Adept. That isolated consciousness is what leads one to what we call a state of Kepara or awareness, right? The point of self-realization, right? Symbolized by the scarab beetle in ancient Egypt, and we'll get back to that in a second. All right. When you read the story of Set slaying a PEP and the story of Ra trying to keep a PEP at bay but never succeeding, and the only one that could come along and do that job was Set. The movie that came out a year or so ago tried to show you this, a little fluffy, but it showed you, and I'm going to tell you why I'm referring to it, because this ties into your question. The Gods of Egypt movie that came out a little while back, about a year or two ago, I can't remember. In the movie, as usual, they always make Set look like the villain, right? And I found it interesting how Set was going around to Tahuti and all the other archetypes and deities and taking their strength. He took Horus's eye, right? He took Tahuti's brain, right? Because Tahuti deals with the intellect and wisdom. What that was trying to show you, even though Hollywood and people watching the movie thought he was playing some villainous evil character, what it was trying to show you, Set is a person that has a Set current or mindset knows they embody all the aspects of the gods. They don't want to worship the gods. They know that the Tahuti part of them exists. It's within them. So this is why you see Set taking all of those characteristics and taking them to himself to show that he embodies all those things. He doesn't need to worship them to tap into that. He embodied all those things. This is what the movie was trying to show you. And in essence, this is what somebody who has a Set mindset applies. And this is what Set represents. This is why he was known as the god of isolation, because he separated himself from all that. Now, remember, and again, I'm getting to the media question, but I got to come here and bring it up. Remember, prior to the 21st and 22nd dynasty, Set was one of the highest deities in ancient Egypt. Remember, he was affiliated with that whole ritual of the underworld. He was that connection to the afterlife. All you got to do is go back in those dynastic periods. What happened is when the Osirian cult came to surface and started ruling from the 23rd dynasty on up, they basically wanted all the other cults to conform to their concept, which was basically monotheism in a sense. Well, the Setian cult didn't want to conform to that mindset. They wanted to separate from that. They basically said, look, we appreciate it, we get it, but you do your thing, we're going to do our thing. Because of them not going along with it, this is when all the information starts to surface about Set being evil, the god of the desert, being some wicked type of entity. This was all created by the Osirian cult, okay? Set was never looked at as some type of demon in ancient Egypt. The problem I have with a lot of Kemetic people today, they still teach that bullshit. And it goes to show me they don't really study and they don't really know their Egyptian history, because if you really knew what Set represented, you would be able to explain that. So the primordial chaos, what that represents, Set slaying Apep. When somebody is a black adept and is able to work with their isolated consciousness and has attained a state of Khepera, a self-realization, they are able to now, always when the chaos comes, they're able to make order out of it. You understand? The primal chaos will always come though. And the black adept knows this. But Set was the only one that could make order out of it. Ra was trying to destroy it. Now, when it says Set slayed Apep, we're not talking of physical death. We're talking about spiritually and mentally, he was able to, again, make order out of it, where he destroyed it in a sense where that primordial chaos did not consume him and control him. Where Ra in the story was worried about killing it, but what he didn't realize was you can't kill energy. You can't destroy something that's always going to resurrect itself and manifest over and over. The Coming Forth by Day has a whole, and I think it's, we actually used this in a ritual we did. It might be hymn 27. I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. It talks about what I'm talking about now, how Apep is destroyed and resurrects every morning, right? That ties into the symbology of why at night, from the late night hours till morning, Ra was trying to keep Apep at bay. Now, what is that symbolic of? When do you have your most powerful spiritual experiences? Your dreams tap you into all types of crazy shit. So that primordial chaos will tend to come at you in dreams. You'll tend to go through most of your craziest shit during those night hours. Why? Why do I say that? Because when you go to sleep at night, worries come to your brain, right? Some of us, we start thinking about stuff that's going on in our life. We start to worry. It could be money. It could be finances. It could be relationship. When does that usually happen? When the body goes into those chaos hours and tries to rest, then the mind starts to race. That's when the primordial chaos of Apep starts to manifest, right? So what tends to happen is somebody that's tapped into the Setian current is able to now attack it and destroy it and put it into perspective where it doesn't consume them. Thus, we got the concept of Set slaying Apep. That's what it's symbolic of. Just like another story, and I hope this is making sense. I hope it's making sense to everybody listening. Just like the story that people demonize of Set fighting Heru or Horus, right? They think, that Set was the devil and Horus. Anybody that comes to me with that Horus being Jesus shit, I already know where their mindset is at. They might as well go back to being Christian because they don't understand anything that they're studying or reading. The whole Horus thing, Set slaying Horus, represents you destroying everything, your lower self, your weaker self, things that are holding you back, all your shortcomings. When Set rose up and slew Heru, he's basically slaying the conformist individual. Oh wow, it's uploaded on the channel. Oh, you missed all that? Wow. Yeah, I was on a rant, John D. I was talking about. I gave it a quick, but yes, it is going to be uploaded after this. What I was saying was the primordial chaos. It represents Set slaying it. I don't know what you missed. What I was saying was Set slaying it and destroying it is symbolic of you destroying all the chaos that arises from within, right? What I meant by that was I was saying at night, the primordial chaos comes during the hours of the evening hours till dawn. And that's why the symbolic story of Ra trying to keep a pep at bay during those hours. It ties into you as an individual because when we go to sleep at night and the body's relaxed, that's when the primordial chaos starts to come into our subconscious mind. We might start worrying about everyday problems, relationships, money, right? And it can consume us, and the chaos can overcome us and destroy us to the point where it can wreck our lives. We can have nervous breakdowns, etc. But what happens is somebody that's tapped into the Setian current is able to see it coming and make order out of it where it doesn't consume them. So the whole story of Set slaying Apep is representative of the Black Adept being able to make order out of the chaos. And Ra failed at it because he was trying to destroy something, as the coming forth by Stay says about Apep. Even after you destroy it, meaning overcome it, it's gonna always resurrect. Meaning, apply it as a Black Adept. If we're all sitting in a room and we're all 8 of us and we all agree with each other and we all get along, it's only a matter of time before somebody makes their way to that room that we don't get along with and like. But tapping into the Setian current, we'll be able to identify that and slay, like Set slayed Apep and destroyed it. So this is what this really represents. And that's why Set was the only one able to defeat Apep, because he wasn't a conformist. He didn't approach it like a religious-minded person would. Like, he realized you can't pray the shit away, right? Religious people think you can pray evil away. Ra was kind of religious, and he even laughed at his father in the story. He's like, and even the movie tries to depict that. He's like, you think I'm going to spend my time doing this shit? And he approached it a whole different way. We need to approach chaos and issues and problems and obstructions in our life the same way that Set did, because he was the only one that had it figured out. He was the only one that took the right mindset, right? We use the word mind/set. We say that word, what are we really saying? So to take the mind of Set, one has to approach it the way Set did, slaying Apep. It's a very unique story, very powerful, and you can actually use this ritualistically to fix shit about yourself. You can apply problems as Apep in a ritual working, and you take the role of Set, and you can actually destroy certain things. I'm almost done. You can destroy certain things or correct certain things, okay? This is a reality, okay? And that's what that story represents. And that's why I was referring it to the Heru horror story, a Heru Set story. Set slaying Heru is representative of the battle that goes on within you every day. You struggling to overcome your weaknesses. When Set rose up and slew Horus, he basically was symbolic, saying, I'm not conforming. I'm not going along. I'm going to be my own God, my own deity. I'm not following anything or anybody. That also connects to the Apep story, okay? So that pretty much is that there. I'm going to wrap this up because my grub is waiting for me. You guys know me. I stay on until it's grub time. But like I said, I'll be on doing this a little more frequently. I actually enjoy doing it. And so I hope this information helped. There should be a monetary thing on there that you can donate. I thought it was there. If not, I'll look. Yeah, I mean, any donate. You could even donate to I have a PayPal. I'll put that on the bottom of my videos. The PayPal is oshun15@yahoo.com. Again, that's oshun15@yahoo.com. That's my PayPal. But there should be a monetary thing. Maybe I don't have it set up right. I'm glad you brought that up. I'll bring it up. I don't usually ask for donations. I mean, shit, everything's greatly appreciated to cover cost of anything. So if anybody decides to do that, that's peace. But you know me, I'm never going to ask for that. But I'll check that. I'm glad you brought that up. I thought I had the shit set up. Maybe you guys know me. I started fucking with this because I'm trying to figure it out. But I'll double check. that. I'm glad you brought that up. I thought there was a monetary thing. Maybe it's not. All right. But again, appreciate much love and respect to all you brothers and sisters, gods, goddesses, whatever makes you feel happy. I appreciate the support And again, I do this shit just because I love doing it. That's it. All right, but I'll talk to everybody soon. Peace. Love y'all. Have a good night.